Alright, we have kind of an uneventful weekend this time around. I was going to do a third one, but I guess that one will just be next week because I overslept again.
And we got 2 movies next week anyway, so it's the same situation.
Yeah. I only slept for 4 hours, yet still somehow managed to oversleep. So
That's crazy.
It happens.
But it does happen.
I didn't really know which one to start with because I don't really know which one's going to be the popular one because I guess both are like being considered destined to not do very well. So please, for the love of God, whatever you do, don't make Pitch Perfect #1 2 weeks in a row. That would be a horrible, horrible disaster. So we're just going to start with Poltergeist because we watched it first. This is the remake that a lot of people are not happy with because generally people get angry about remakes, but I've seen a lot of anger directed at this one. And that's I'm sure it has a lot to do with just how amazing the original is, but also I don't know. Because making a haunted house movie nowadays with all the cliches you must put in there, or else studios won't want to make it. I think people were kind of already under the impression of what this movie is, and they're probably about 90% right. The director got some attention. He is Gil Kennan, the director of Monster House, and I don't know that he's done anything since Monster House before this, but he seemed, obviously the first thing everybody thought was, that seems like a pretty good fit. So we're dealing with 2 directors who started in animated movies and moved up. Well, moved up in a sense. So what happens, there was kind of, I have to say this every time, I never immediately hate remakes. I always try to give them a benefit of the doubt as much as I can, unless I think it's gonna, I just really, really undeniably think it's gonna suck. Because seeing, you know, a movie you love through another director's eyes it's an interesting concept, and there are times where it can really, really pay off, but most of the time it's meaningless. And here they kind of start with, they take the original movie as is, and they put horror cliches that weren't in there before in there, which is not a good way to... Immediately, the movie begins with them moving into a new house, which is the ultimate horror movie cliche, to begin your movie with the main characters moving into a new house before a haunting begins. Now, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that was kind of a correction, because a lot of people kind of like to give the original grief because they lived in the house for years before the spirits attacked, even though they had been on top of the cemetery that whole time. It seemed weird that there was such a delay before the poltergeist started attacking. So this kind of explains how they attack immediately as soon as they move in. I can understand going in with that perspective and making that change, but the only thing it really does when you start talking with them moving in is it makes the movie feel really, really obvious and bland from the start. Because you have to do everything that falls in line with family moves into a haunted house beginning, and that's what it is. All the way down to getting pizza like they did in The Conjuring. You know, The Conjuring movies can do it right, but this one just kind of felt like it was kind of taking the lazy way out a little bit. And now, with our new cast list, they kind of half did. I hate to kind of do this as we're just comparing this to the original, but you know, we'll get into other things, but that's kind of, it's difficult not to do that, and you'll see what I mean. The thing about the original was the characters played by Craig T. Nelson and Joe Beth Williams were like really, really charming and funny, and you know, they're getting stoned in the bedroom and doing all that, and you know, she's like really, really excited about the supernatural things that are happening at first. Now they are Sam Rockwell and Rosemary DeWitt. Two talented actors, obviously. And the issue here mainly is how significantly cut down the part of the parents is in this one. And the focus is more on... There's three... Obviously, we still have the three kids. There is, the girl who gets abducted, there's the brother, and then there's the older teenage sister. The big issue here is you could totally make it work, focusing more on the kids instead of the parents. That could work if you do it in a certain way, but the way they handle it here is they take the brother and they basically make him the central character. And he's like the smart kid that saves the day cliche. It's horrible. I kind of hate this kid, but the thing is the character, not the actor. I'm not that cruel. Now, and the issue about this is by making him the central character, they add another cliche that wasn't in there before, which is it turns into, obviously when it started in the original, it was the mother who noticed the stacking chairs and all that. And immediately they knew something was up. This one takes the whole kid sees something supernatural happen and nobody believes them. They do that. That I don't think that was a good move either. And they do that for a little while. It's a fair ways into the movie before they see... It takes until the abduction, really, that they believe him, and he's the only one that's really, you know, seeing things for what they are, and nobody will listen to him. And that's unfortunate. They didn't... I mean, there wasn't much to the teenage girl in the original movie, but they don't really do anything to add to her here either, which I guess there's not a whole lot you really need to do with this character. There's just... She could really just be written out, I guess, but they make her the ultimate current girl. She's constantly looking at her phone, and she says, I don't know, this kind of felt, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I thought it felt almost a little out of touch. I don't really know what teenage girls are doing now, but it seemed a little dated that maybe this is just how poorly written the character is. Her basic thing when they move into the house is, there are no malls in this shithole town. This seemed more like a girl from like the late 80s or something when she said that line.
Kind of.
Because malls are shit now. But teenage girls in movies don't seem to realize that anymore. So, that was the issue. And probably the most offensive, totally ruining the child characters here, is her name's not Caroline anymore. I don't even remember what it was now. It's Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She is basically, you know, in the original, she was charming and funny and sympathetic, and you felt bad for her when the bird died, but then she said, can I get a goldfish? And you're like, she's so adorable. And, you know, it's so, you know, oh my gosh, she's been abducted, please, you know, I hope this turns out well. You don't really give a shit when she's abducted this time, because all the way up until then, she's basically just you know those movies that have that child character where it's supposed to be funny because she repeats the cuss words that she hears? And everybody thinks that's so inappropriate, but it's funny because, you know, children cussing is hilarious. That's all she does until she's abducted. That's the only character she is. They basically have the fuck-ass dinner table discussion that was in Donnie Darko, with, you know, smaller language, but still. That's basically the scene that happens.
Pretty much.
So... That did not go well. there is one change that they made that I do kind of respect, though. They take, well, the Beatrice Straight character now is Jane Addams. Yeah, that one. Indie Queen Jane Addams. Which was an interesting casting choice for a movie like this. And they have replaced Zelda Rubinstein's character with Jared Harris. And instead of being clairvoyant, he is a ghost hunter that has a reality show. Yeah, I kind of get that, you know, updating. And the one thing that I liked about it was they didn't try to recast that character and do that character again. Because there's really not another way to do that character without that actress. That's kind of a one-of-a-kind thing. So they just said, fuck it, we're going to take the character out completely and make a new one. That I can understand. And it's really... Jared Harris is actually a good presence here. Even if immediately when I saw him I was having horrible flashbacks.
Yes.
Of the last movie he was in that was also a haunted house movie that ended up being one of the worst movies of last year. My ears are still ringing.
Yep.
But no, it's much, he's much more of a presence here, and makes the character entertaining. He's kind of somewhat like the ghost hunter version of Robert Shaw in Jaws. That's kind of what he is. All the way up to showing all of his wounds and having stories and shit. And he and Jane Addams' character have a really, you know, good back and forth banter thing going on that's entertaining. And it adds kind of... It feels a little late in the movie for them to finally have, you know, something to do other than just what they do. But it's still... There's something that adds... The charm of those characters kind of brings something into the movie that the movie was lacking in that time period. They weren't in it. And yeah, they do the callback where this house is clean is now his TV show's catchphrase. That's kind of reaching for callbacks to the original a little bit, but it's fine. It didn't piss me off or anything, I guess. Now, a good thing about this movie is there's a lot of laziness in it. There's a lot of cliches in it that really didn't need to be put in there because they weren't in there in the first place. Adding shit that makes it, like, when you do a remake, you're trying to take something and kind of improve it or update it or maybe tell it in a different way. You don't take... Even if it's a good movie, you can still take a good movie and do a good remake if you're really talented. But you don't take a great movie and remake it and put bad shit in it that wasn't there before. It just doesn't make any sense, but, you know, I guess you gotta sell it, because I don't even know. I don't even think crowds go for that shit anymore. It's really hard to find a crowd that likes a horror movie anymore.
It really is.
I really felt alone in my Unfriended review crew, but, you know, for the most part, because this genre used to sell itself like nothing. Like, you could put a whole bunch of nobodies in a horror movie and it would sell on the genre alone.
Yep.
That's not really the way it works anymore. You have to be, like, a really, really... I guess, really, you just have to be really fucking good and get good word of mouth like The Conjuring did. Like I said, The Conjuring felt like it was out forever. The Conjuring was out for like half a year. It was in theaters. But lately, this is kind of the reason, I guess. It's just kind of... There's really nothing going on that stands out. Like, people will go see this and they may be entertained by it. But it's like, it's not one of those movies that you're gonna go out and say, you know, this was so, you know, scary and thrilling and awesome. And you tell people and it builds itself. It's just kind of like that movie that some people, you know, saw and then nobody talks about it later. And you know of its existence, but just, no, I don't know how many people who will go to see this now know of the existence of the first one, because with the PG-13 rating, you're aiming low. So, I don't know, you know, who's aware of that now and how they see it. Because I do try my best to not do the, you know, I know it's difficult and pretty much impossible when you have a movie as out there and awesome as the original is, but it's a hard thing to do. But, you know, despite all of that, there are really moments in this movie where you can tell the people behind the camera do care, and they're actually trying. Like, there's creative camera angles, and things are done really well. I like the particular shot where, the tree comes through, the sunroof and the ceiling, and it drags the kid all the way up the stairs and then out the window, and it's all in just one shot. Stuff like that, is good. And there's a couple of things where the camera, like when the kid looks under him for the clown nose as he's following it, and the camera follows his point of view, and it's upside down. Stuff like that kind of works in making it feel like its own thing and not just another generic haunted house movie that nobody gives a shit about. And won't remember, like, the day after they see it. Or that night, even. But there's still some... It keeps going back and forth. Like, it throws a bunch of lame stuff at you, but then it'll throw one thing in there where you're like, oh, that's nice. The drill scene is new. That's not a bad scene, even if it does kind of show off the... This movie's in 3D for some reason. I don't know why. But thankfully, we didn't have to see it that way. But you can tell. It's one of those movies where you can tell when that shit's coming. There's only like 2, so I don't know what the...
Yeah.
I mean, I could say this movie didn't need to be in 3D, but that's like saying, you know, hey, outside there's air. People just fucking know that.
And most people don't go anymore.
Yeah. But still, it just kind of goes back. Like, they throw in, like, you know, jump scares are in there, obviously. This movie has the world's loudest squirrel in it. And that's, you know, I just kept thinking about Christmas Vacation the whole time. There's, they kind of up the clown factor a little bit, which I was afraid of, because that's all they're using to promote it is, you know, just, you know, clowns are the bee's knees when you're trying to promote a horror movie. Don't laugh about what I'm writing right now. But the thing about it was they didn't milk it to death too much, because there's, instead of just the one clown now, it's a lot of clowns that they find in like a hidden cellar. And I was a little concerned about how they were going to do the big clown scene, because the clown in the original works because it's like almost life-size. But the clowns in this are like actual dolls, like not quite Puppet Master, a little bigger than that, but still, and it kind of seems like a ridiculous concept that he's that small. They do, it probably helps though that unlike the original, the clown scene is not the climax now. It's actually like one of the first big scare scenes. And then they do away with it. So that's good. They didn't milk it like they could have, so there's that at least. There's one thing really, really missing here that's really unfortunate is there was a really fun aspect to the original that this one is missing. I know this one's missing like a half an hour. This one's only an hour and a half when the original was almost 2, but there was some important stuff in there that made it the movie that it is, that could have brought some life to this movie. The whole thing, like, it's constantly, it's, when you're making a movie that's aimed down at this audience, and you kind of feel like you're half-assing it, there's not a whole lot of fun put in it. People think that, people are so in demand now of horror movies that are actually scary, that people making horror movies try a little too hard to be nothing but scary. They don't want to have fun with it. They just want to try desperately to scare people. And it just ends up not being really any fun for anybody, because the movie ends up not being scary, and it's not fun, and, you know, it's just two negatives together. the scene in the original where she's having, like, the chair moves by itself and the girl can be pushed across the floor, and it, like, excites her and she thinks it's awesome. And there's something funny about the whole concept where they have the one room that's shut off where all the crazy shit's going on, and they're just like, yeah, we don't go in there now. This movie doesn't have any of that. It's like really trying to. I mean, it has those moments in between where, you know, the Sam Rockwell character is kind of trying to be funny and stuff like that, but that they don't really do a lot with that. It's mostly trying to be nothing but horror. And with a story like this, that's, you know, those fun moments in there made it what it was, and taking them out kind of just, there's clearly something that's off. Speaking of the Sam Rockwell character, it's interesting that there's some things in this movie that kind of feel like they were supposed to go on to other things or show other things, and they just didn't. Like whether the writers had just really bad attention spans or it was like a bunch of stuff that got cut. One thing stands out immediately though. What was up with Rockwell's character talking to people? Like, because here's the thing, every time we see him at home, he's this really happy, loving husband and father, and everything's, you know, he's, you know, like, everybody in the house likes him. He doesn't lead a horrible life by any means, and he seems to really like his life at home. Mm-hmm. But there's this moment at the very beginning where they're looking at the house, and he's talking to the realtor, and they're having this really awkward conversation with his wife, like, standing right here, and it's almost like he's awkwardly hitting on her and failing at it. And then I was just kind of like, oh, maybe he's just friendly. But then there is a second scene where he's at the store, and there's a female clerk behind the desk, and he's talking to her, and it's kind of the same thing. Like, he compliments her apron, and it's like he's trying to get something started, but then that just never happens again. What was that?
It seems somewhat out of place.
I don't know, that was weird. Once again, maybe he's just really, really friendly for some reason. I don't know. But there's things in here that kind of, you know, make, like, when it has to reach those crazy levels, it kind of goes for it. It doesn't reach the levels of insanity the original reaches by any means, but it tries to go that length, but you still feel like it's not wanting to take any risks or think outside the box or anything. It's just kind of, it's almost like it's just acknowledging, like, yeah, this could be really, really crazy, but we're just gonna kind of stop here. It obviously does not go the extra mile that Spielberg and Hooper did with the real skeletons. That shit's fucked up.
Yeah, it is.
CG skeletons we got now. That's I expected, unfortunately, with the way they do things now. Clearly, they were not going to go the crazy ass Spielberg route with the real skeletons or anything. But you know, I don't know. They change. There's some stuff where I can understand the changes, but then there's other stuff where it's not so much. Like, I can understand. The original movie was rated R initially, and Spielberg had to talk them out of it. To which I can understand why they would go with that rating originally, because obviously this was before PG-13. It's weird to watch a PG movie from the 80s and see a dude rip his face off. Just rip his face off in a mirror. And it's one of the most disgusting things you will ever see. And then a PG-13 movie comes out years later, and you say, well, I'm not expecting the PG-13 movie to have the balls to do that. They can't get away with that now.
No.
If they tried to do that scene in this movie, it would have been rated R, no question. So that's just kind of, yeah, those little setbacks. But still, it's not a bad remake or anything. For every time there's something lazy that happens, there's also a time where it seems like they were trying to do something, you know, with it. I would say I don't know how you feel about it or if you've seen them, but if I had to give like a scale, This is probably about as good as the first sequel. Poltergeist 2. I think The Other Side is the subtitle. Because it's not really that great, but it has some great stuff in it. The original sequel. The Ghost Preacher is awesome. That stuff is really great in the sequel. And they have, there's almost, I kind of felt like there was somewhat of a callback to the sequel in this one. When Rockwell has a scene that reminded me of, there's something in Poltergeist 2 called the Vomit Monster. I think there was kind of a callback to that, I'm not sure. I'm going to take it as such just to give it credit. And as far as callbacks are concerned, one of the very last scenes of this movie has the most unsubtle bumper sticker I have ever seen in my life. It's not just that it's unsubtle, but the camera, like, zooms in on it for a long time. Like, it's just supposed to be there as this thing where it's like, hey, callback. But it just zooms in on it until you get the point. I thought that was kind of hilarious for the wrong reasons, but... yeah, so this is all over the place, this movie is. Pretty much take everything I just said for what you will. So it's just kind of resting in the middle. It's not a bad remake, but there's so much that they did that they shouldn't have. But there's a few things that they did where you can understand and think like, alright, that was a reasonable choice.
And judging it from someone that never saw the original, like I haven't, I really like this a lot.
Mm.
I dug both movies this week, and I thought it was fun.
Alright, our second and last movie already is Tomorrowland. This was an interesting viewing because, with my whole not watching trailers thing, I don't even know if watching the trailer would have helped me, I don't know.
No, probably not.
I had no idea. I knew it was a big budget Disney movie starring George Clooney. That's all I knew going in. I had no idea what this was, apart from that. And it is, I'm really not sure how to say what it is without going into a synopsis. It's like 10 minutes long, but, it's basically, this might sound off-putting, but, just hang on, just give it a chance for a second. It's basically a big budget adventure movie, it's very Spielberg, as far as adventure movies are concerned. But it's kind of somewhat also a big environmental climate change message. I know that's off-putting, but, hold your horses. Hold on. There's... The thing that makes it interesting, apart from feeling like an old-fashioned adventure movie, is trying to... When you don't know what it's about is an interesting way to go in, because you spend a lot of the movie trying to figure out what it is, and it's kind of this mystery. And that kept me engaged a lot more than I had anticipated. Because for a long time in this movie, at the same time, you kind of know the direction that it's headed, especially with the very unsubtle opening, with Clooney basically saying that the world's going to hell. But even though you kind of know the general direction it's going, everything in this movie is so cryptic for a long time. And you just kind of have to follow it to see where exactly it's going. And for the most part, I thought it was a fun time. We kind of have two parallel stories going on. We kind of abandoned the first one after a while, and we mostly stay on this one. But we have young Clooney who meets this girl and then finds his way to Tomorrowland, I guess. And then we have this parallel story set in present day with Britt Robertson, who, somebody today referred to her as the new Taylor Kitsch. Because the whole putting her in everything and it doesn't really work out thing. And she has been she's obviously a delinquent and stuff like that because they always have to be. It's like she's reminded me a lot of Garrett Hedlund in Tron Legacy at the beginning there, all the way up to the motorcycle and the helmet and all that.
Chris Pine in Star Trek.
Yeah, that too, and the I think the same score.
Probably.
And for all 3 movies, and eventually she gets arrested, and when she's given her belongings after she gets out, she finds a pin that is not hers. And it basically shows her Tomorrowland. I hate saying it within the context for some reason. So eventually she meets the girl that Clooney knew, who actually turns out to be a robot. That's why she didn't age. And they go on a journey to save the world. That's basically what's going on here. Yeah, it has, it's kind of moments there. Like, it gets off to a really good start, and it really takes you to a world that you're really interested in finding out about. And Brad Bird really knows how to make a movie. Yes. Like, people give him a lot of credit for being able to do,
Incredibles?
I was trying to remember if he did one more. It was at the other. I was thinking he did another.
Should be
Pixar.
the Iron Giant.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm thinking of. Not Pixar, but I think that's what I'm thinking of. I knew it was another animated movie. And you actually see a thing for the Iron Giant in Keegan-Michael Key's store.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who saw
and all the Star Wars stuff because Disney.
Yes.
So anyway, and then he made the transition and made Ghost Protocol, and everybody was like, "Yeah, this guy's awesome." So it's not news to anybody. Brad Bird really knows how to make a movie.
Yes.
And this is a really fascinating world, and the effects are really, really spectacular. There are some times where you're watching it and you're like, that is totally a green screen, but not in like, the old-fashioned, it distracts you way, but just, still, the effects are really great regardless of that, is what I'm saying. Now, and then, once it kind of gets into the outside world and we realize what's going on, it's a bit of a letdown after a start like that, but once the story kind of gets in the direction it's going and you understand what's happening, it kind of won me back over pretty quick.
Yeah.
And it's, I understand it's going to get a lot of criticism, I'm sure. I think it already is.
Already has, yeah.
About basically, one thing is, it's a fun, harmless adventure movie, but the thing that people aren't going to like about it is when it tries to be more. Because audiences really don't like being, preached to. Mm-hmm. And I get that. But at the same time, and normally I would kind of brush that off as well and say, this point is really being driven into my head like a sledgehammer, and you don't need to do that, I get the point. But this movie, because to be totally honest with you, the climate change thing is kind of something that freaks me out. So, I was kind of, maybe that's why I didn't feel as, You
didn't brush it off like everyone else does.
Yeah, because I totally understand, and there is one scene in this movie that I'm sure will get a lot of hate. And I get it, because it's literally, throwing everything at you. There's a big scene at the end where Hugh Laurie has a big speech. And the thing with me here is, Hugh Laurie's giving this big speech, and in most audiences, people will be saying, oh my god, this movie's point is so blatant, and they're just, we get the point already. But the thing about it is everything that Hugh Laurie is saying in this speech is, undeniably true.
Yeah.
And when it's something that's so true and important, I'm kind of okay with it being that prominent in the story, especially since the story itself has so much to do with that. Because I do like that whole setup that we get to know relatively quickly, where it's the whole... We see what Tomorrowland is, and we see how fantastic and amazing the future can be. But then Clooney drops the bomb on us and says that's what it was going to be, but not now, because of everything. And basically, the whole, you know, time travel story, in every time travel movie ever, the story obviously is you have to do something in the past so that the future is not all fucked up. That's, you know, from A Sound of Thunder and God knows what else. So it takes that basic plot outline and makes this big, fun adventure movie out of it. And, yeah, I totally get it if you think the point is it's way too heavy-handed. I totally get it. But I was, you know, it didn't take anything away from it to me. And there's a lot, okay, and that aside, if you are here just for an adventure movie, but it's not really, you know, doing a whole lot for you with that outweighing it, there's a lot to admire on an ambitious front about a movie that launches a rocket into space out of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, no lie.
Stuff like that, I am hoping will deliver for some people. So yeah, there's a lot of, you know, really big scenes in this, and it works really well. Like I said, it's really got a Spielberg feel to it, like classic Spielberg. And yeah, that stuff wasn't without its messages, so there's that. And for the most part, there are characters here. Keegan-Michael Key and Catherine Hahn pop up, which was really funny to me, because I wasn't expecting them. I had no idea they were in it. Though they are kind of at that point in the movie where you're kind of saying, like, well, this is not the thing, this is not the direction I thought this was going, and this is kind of, yeah. But, you know, like I said, once it gets back into the story and you kind of realize what the movie is and where it's going, I like it pretty well. There were times, you know, back and forth where I wasn't sure. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, once it reached its end and did what it needed to do, and the credits were rolling, I was like, yeah, you know, I like this. This is nice. There's one character I kind of like. He doesn't last very long, but there are these, like, robot security that are after them, and they're basically the agents from the Matrix.
Yeah.
And that one guy who's just always got this creepy smile on his face, and he's like outside Clooney's house, and you're like, we're about to blow you up unless you do this. You have 1 minute to comply before we kill you. I like that guy, even though he didn't last very long after that. But
he's kind of like the polite stranger, but a different way.
Yeah, he's a really friendly Agent Smith. That's what he is. I totally get people who are put off by movies that set themselves up as big adventure movies and then put a heavy-handed message into it, but I thought it worked here within this story. So I also kind of had a vague idea it was a message movie going in, mm-hmm. and having that in my head already maybe helped a little bit. But yeah, this movie worked for me for the most part. So yeah, like I said, there are those moments where it kind of, you know, slows down and you're like, this maybe wasn't quite what I was expecting, and now I'm kind of disappointed and let down, especially after the big opening seemingly set up something totally different. Yeah. But there's a portion in the middle of the movie where there's a lot of driving from one place to another that might lose people. But yeah, it's fine, and the characters, you know, grab you enough. I like the little robot girl. Mm. I'm not sure what her name is. Raffi Cassidy. That's got a ring to it. She looked kind of familiar. She's apparently in Snow White and the Huntsman and Dark Shadows. She needs to improve that filmography a little bit, but she'll get there. She's still young. So I was telling you, she reminded me of like a really young Saoirse Ronan. Like, not that Saoirse Ronan's not still really young, but like, you know, child. So yeah, once it you know got where it was going and did its thing, it worked for me. So that's the best I can say about it. If it works for me.
I gotta chime in a bit here, too, obviously, because it's me we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. I really was excited for this movie when I first heard about it. I heard the concept with all the Disney rides and areas being made into films. Hmm. I'm obviously worried about the Jungle Book, but that's only a personal thing. It's not anything else.
Not to mention we have 2 coming.
Yeah. And we still have Favreau's Magic Kingdom movie, which we still don't know anything more about. But, I think the world looks phenomenal. I really do. I think everything looks just grand like it should. Disney fans, you will totally appreciate the fact the movie basically starts with "There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow," and they bring up the World's Fair and they show Disneyland for Small World. You can tell it's Small World Disneyland because it's the Small World that's outdoors, and you get a nice. Michael Giacchino is actually the ride attendant.
Oh
yeah. Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. And the Iron Giant callbacks and the Blast from the Past store, I thought that was great. Everybody works really well, and you know what? I really like Tim McGraw as an actor.
Yeah, I knew there was somebody else forgetting him.
Yeah, Tim McGraw as an actor is really good. I've never been big on his music, but I really enjoy him as an actor.
Yeah, I was really surprised by how charming he was in The Blind Side.
Yeah, no lie.
Wow, I really should not be saying this, but it's true.
Yeah, everybody really hits on all points. This is a really enjoyable film. Some people will have a lot of bad things to say about it, but yeah, sit back, relax, enjoy yourself. It's pretty fun.
Okay, we're done here.
So ends another edition of AJ's Movie Reviews. Next week, we're going to be talking Aloha and San Andreas. And Slow West may be on that video too, potentially. We'll see.
Probably, yeah.
Alright. And obviously, quick programming note. Later on tonight, if you are a Halloween Horror Nights fan, join me at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central for a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. We'll have Alex Show, as well as Tristan, HHN Fan 16. Mr. Entertainment, Aaron, our newest podcaster, is going to be joining us as well. And First Class Horror, all of them will be joining me at 8 p.m. tonight. Ashley will be returning on Monday with a brand new edition of Gaming with Ash. We have more podcasts coming this week. Sorry about the problem with the podcast for NXT, with it having all the glitches, but don't worry, I blame Hoodie Man. That being said, thank you guys and girls out there for watching. Join us for Versus this weekend and Cryptic Comments Teenage Wasteland. And AJ, any parting words?